Straight up. Welcome back to your Way Happy Bible study on CBD. And let's get right back into it. We are in Genesis chapter 6, and we're proceeding in verse 10. And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, before we go forward, I want to explain that Shem is the father of the Jews and the Arabs. Ham is the father of the black races and the Asian races. And then Japheth is the father of all of the Caucasian races and the Hispanics. Okay? So you have all of the peoples of the earth are, and those like the Indians and that kind of thing from India. All of all of the people of the earth descend from these 3. Okay? These 3 sons of Noah. In verse 11, the earth also was corrupt before God. Now, see, man was doing genetic manipulation like he is now. And that corrupted the DNA structure of the earth. They were changing things just like they're changing now. They're changing the DNA of our food with GMO. They're changing the DNA of the soil. They're changing the DNA of the vegetation, of the people, of the animals. And this is what it's talking about. It says the earth also was corrupt before God, the earth itself, not just people. Man had corrupted the earth. And every time the fallen angels show up and start interbreeding with human women who don't have the temple inside them, technology appears in the world as well. They bring it. The angels bring it. Okay? And the earth, it says, the earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. But see, the angels showed up here, and then all of a sudden you've got a corrupt earth. Then, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days when the Son of Man comes. You have fallen angels interbreeding with the tares now also. And it corrupts the earth and the people upon it. Even though they are naturally corrupt, it makes them smart corrupt, dangerous corrupt, not just ignorant corrupt. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. The tares are violent. In verse 12, and God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt. For all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. All flesh. See, even those born with the temple inside them are corrupt, living in a corrupt world. We're sinners. We're all sinners. Even those born with the temple inside, we're all sinners in a body that is programmed for sin, aka a sin nature. Okay? So you are encased in a body that is programmed for sin. And that is why we are sinners, just like the tares are. But they don't have any hope. We do. God has given us of his Spirit to live within us. And if you have Jesus in you, you have life in you. And you're going to live whether you're in this world or outside of it. In verse 13, and God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me. For the earth is filled with violence through them. It was in a horrible place, just like it is now. And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. In verse 14, make thee an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shalt thou make in the ark, and shalt pitch it within and without with pitch. And this is the fashion which thou shalt make it of. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, and the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. So he told him exactly how to make it. In verse 16, a window shalt thou make to the ark, and in a cubit shalt thou finish it above, and the door of the ark shalt thou set in the side thereof. With lower, second, and third stories shalt thou make it. In verse 17, and behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth. The flood was not just some freak thing. God says right here, behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth, to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. So he's going to destroy all of those who have breath, but don't have the temple inside them. From under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. Everything that is in the earth shall die. In verse 18, but with thee will I establish my covenant, and thou shalt come into the ark, thou and thy sons and thy wife and thy sons' wives with thee. They are the new seed for the second harvest. We are in the second harvest right now. We are about to see the second harvest take place, as the world will be destroyed again as it was in the times of Noah, except this time it's going to be destroyed with fire. In verse 19, and of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. They shall be male and female. Of fowls after their kind, and of cattle after their kind, of every creeping thing of the earth after his kind. 2 of every sort shall come unto thee, to keep them alive. The animals that were to be spared came to Noah. He didn't have to go out there and gather them. They came to him. In verse 21, and take thou unto thee of all food that is eaten, and thou shalt gather it to thee, and it shall be for food for thee and for them. In verse 22, thus did Noah, according to all that God commanded him, so did he. Let's go on straight into chapter 7, verse 1. And the Lord said unto Noah, come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. In verse 2, of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and his female. Now that right there, when it's talking about beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and his female, it may also mean that they took some of those humanoids without the temple inside them, because there were tares again in the world after the flood. Okay. God doesn't call them people. He calls them beasts of the earth. In verse 3, of fowls also of the air by sevens, the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth. In verse 4, for yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. So when God's saying this to him, he's got a week, and the animals are going to be coming to him. He's going to load everything on the ark. For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off of the face of the earth. Everything was covered by water, even the highest mountains. There was no place to get above it unless you were on the ark. In verse 5, and Noah did according to all that the Lord commanded him. He's obedient to God, which is why he was spared. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth. In verse 7, and Noah went in, and his sons, and his wife, and his sons' wives with him, into the ark because of the waters of the flood. Now let's talk for just 1 second about what we were saying about how he declares the end from the beginning. We're seeing in the beginning that there is a destruction of the earth because it was filled with violence. Technology was here. Genetic manipulation was here. Everything was corrupt, just like it is now. As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days when the Son of Man comes. So, everything was corrupt back then, and everything is corrupt now. He's telling us the end from the beginning. What he's showing us is that this same thing is going to happen again, except this time, everything's going to be destroyed by fire. This time, the ark is not made of gopher wood. The ark is made of transparent gold and is called the New Jerusalem. Okay? This time, the ark is the New Jerusalem. And the children of God will be evacuated to the New Jerusalem. The earth will be cleansed by fire. Everything will be burned off. And it will grow back. It'll be a paradise. It'll be gorgeous, wonderful. When we come back, you won't even be able to tell that man was ever here. Because when the flood came, it got rid of a lot of things, but it didn't get rid of all the evidence of how things were pre-flood. See, we still have pyramids and things like that, evidence. But after it's cleansed by fire, you won't have that evidence anymore. The pyramids will melt. The elements will melt with fervent heat. There won't be any more signs that man has ever been here. It's going to be amazing. And so let's go on. But this is what I'm trying to get you to see is the parallels between then and now. We're going into a period of time where the age is changing. The millennium is coming, which will be the start of the 7th 1,000 years. And that is the day of Christ, the day of rest, where he's on the throne and everything's great and everything starts all over again. When we come back, man will start all over again, just like when Noah and his family came off of the ark. So I want you to see the parallels prophetically of the beginning, which is also telling us what it's going to be like at the end in our time. So we have a destruction of all things yet again before us coming shortly in this generation. And it is telling us why things are destroyed, because the earth is corrupt and filled with violence. And it is like it was back then. In verse 8, of clean beasts and of beasts that are not clean, and of fowls and of everything that creepeth upon the earth. Now, see, beasts that are not clean, that has dual meanings. Okay? That can be the tares. It can also be, it also refers to animals that are not clean. And of fowls and of everything that creepeth upon the earth. See, he's telling us, he's cluing us in. Everything that creepeth upon the earth is represented 2 by 2. Even the humanoids without the temple, the tares, because we still have tares, right? And the tares are also going to be evacuated. The children who are tares will be evacuated. All of the children are going in the evacuation, all of them. So you have wheat and tares among the world's children, and they're all going to be evacuated as well. So see, we have some evidence in the way things are going to be to show how they were before too. And he says right there in verse 8, of everything that creepeth upon the earth. He doesn't say with the exception of the tares, with the exception of those who are born with, without the temple. So but he does include them by saying, and of everything that creepeth upon the earth. Okay? In verse 9, and they were just considered beasts, just considered another animal, beasts to the Lord. And Noah was considered a man. See, you have, when you have, he does use the term man to refer to Adam's line, and he has referred to the tares as beasts. Okay. They're just kind of like another animal. They're not hot. Without God living within them, they are not evolved. In verse 9, there went in 2 and 2 unto Noah into the ark, as God had commanded Noah. In verse 10, and it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. In verse 11, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up. Now there is water. We know that there's water underneath our feet. Okay, we have a water table for our water under there. But back then there was a lot of water in the great deep underneath the crust of the earth. And the windows of heaven were opened. See, back then you had a canopy of water that surrounded the earth. The sky was pink instead of blue because of this canopy. But this canopy created a very special climate where people could live to be 900 years old again. Okay, where people could live to be 900 years old. And the floods came from this canopy that was broken open. The windows of heaven were opened, and the water in this canopy that protected us from the sun came down onto the earth, and the waters that were under inside the deep came up as well, and it covered everything. Prior to this time, there were no seasons. The world was one continent, and it in Pangea, and the climate was perfect all the time. When the weight of the water covered even the highest mountains, the earth shifted on its axis from the weight of the water, and the poles froze. And after that, since then, we've had seasons. Now, isn't this interesting? I learned some of this stuff from the Creation Science Museum in Glen Rose, Texas, where they have done extensive experimentation on the pre-flood environment, and they built hyperbaric chambers, and they created this pre-flood environment in these hyperbaric chambers, and they put venomous snakes in there, and exposed to this pre-flood environment, they weren't venomous anymore. They became non-venomous, weirdly enough. And a lion, a wolf, a lamb, all of these creatures that are carnivorous and would eat the lamb, didn't eat the lamb. They became docile. They weren't carnivorous or aggressive anymore in this pre-flood chamber environment that they had created. It was really fascinating. They had sent a representative to our church back then to teach us these things. It was fascinating, and I really enjoyed it. But the sky was pink before the flood, and since then it's been blue. But it may go back to pink. We'll just have to see when he restores things. In verse 12 of Genesis chapter 7, and the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. In verse 13, in the selfsame day entered Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them into the ark. They and every beast after his kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and every fowl after his kind, and every bird of every sort. And they went in unto Noah into the ark, 2 and 2 of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. See, he's got to have included the tares. The tares had the breath of life in them, just like the animals. And he says, 2 and 2 of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. So Noah did, God probably did send a pair of tares, male and female. And they're not referred to as people. They're referred to as beasts of the earth because they don't have the temple inside them. In verse 16, and they that went in male and female of flesh, as God had commanded him. And the Lord shut him in. And like he sent the animals to Noah, he would have sent the male and female of the tares as well to the ark. Noah didn't have to go ask them. In verse 17, and the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased, and bare up the ark, and it was lift up above the earth. So the ark was preserved through this deluge. And remember, they had technology, so they had steel ships like they have now. They have ships like they had now back then. When Noah started building the ark, technology was introduced. And over the next 120 years that it took him to build the ark, along with his sons, technology progressed to the point where when the flood came, it was like our world is now. And remember, they had, just like we have, big steel ships, like the Titanic, okay? The Titanic went down, and all of the steel ships that they had made and things like that, none of them survived the flood. But the ark was very specially made. The wood it was made from and the pitch within and without, it was like a cork. It wasn't open on the top. It had a closed top. It had a window, had a door in the side of it that was closed. So it was enclosed like a cork. So when it was deluged, it just popped right back up to the top. Whereas the steel ships that they used for shipping and things like that, like we do now, those all perished. And in some of the judgments that are coming, 1/3 of the shipping is destroyed in one judgment alone. And that's all, 1/3 of the ships were destroyed. Okay. In verse 18 of chapter 7. Oh, wow, we're out of time. And the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark went upon the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. Everything was covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. So from the highest tip of the highest mountain, 15 more cubits of water was on the earth. The very highest point on the earth was underwater by 15 cubits. And the mountains were all covered. We're out of time. Man, it goes fast, doesn't it? I love you guys. Thanks for studying with me. God bless you. And we'll be back next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 6 p.m. Central for more Way Happy Bible studies. God bless you.